we've had natural disasters. I saw this morning there's fires in Panama City, Florida. Racial unrest. We had a horribly contentious election last time. And now, as I'm standing here, there's a war raging in Europe that probably a month ago none of us would have even considered that happening or being on the radar. You know, when you have events in the world, you can look at things one of two ways. For example, with COVID, there's problem after problem, but then you see, our healthcare workers who were basically heroes during that time. When we have natural disasters or things like that, you see many times communities coming together and other people, supporting them. With contentious elections, we did have the highest voter turnout we've had in this country in years and years and years. And even in the war, in Ukraine going on, when you see the actions of a tyrant, you also see the best in people. I saw this thing on Twitter. I hate to say I get my news from Twitter, but on Twitter yesterday, where Ukrainians were arriving in Germany, and there were thousands of German people lined up with signs, "I have one room in my house, I have one room in my house," and they were literally taking these people off the train and taking them home with them. So, and that's kind of where we are with our story this morning. We had a situation where something happened with the children of Israel, and we're going to see how they dealt with it. We're in the book of Numbers, and basically they finally crossed the Jordan and are on the edge of the promised land, is where the story starts. And it says, when Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, "Go up through the Negev and on into the hill country. See what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, or few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruits of the land." Verse 21 says, "So they went and explored the land." And I'm going to jump to 23 because I went through all these places that I can't pronounce. "When they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes." Now pay attention to this. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them. Now these are not the grapes you buy at IGA, folks. I mean, you imagine how big a group of grapes is that it takes 2 people with a pole to carry them. They also brought pomegranates and figs. And at the end of 40 days, they came back from exploring the land. They were gone a whole month. They came back to Moses and the whole Israelite community. There they reported to them, to the whole assembly, and showed them the fruit. They gave Moses this account. "We went into the land which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey." They've been told the whole time, you just get through this terrible time, we're going to take you to the land flowing with milk and honey. Here is the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and their cities are fortified. We even saw the descendants of Anak, and Anak was a giant. Verse 30. Then Caleb gets up and says, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can do it." Okay? But the other men who had gone up with him said, "We can't attack these people. They are stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it, and all the people we saw there are of great size." So to summarize, they sent out 12, the Bible says, spies for 40 days, and they come back, and 2 of them, Caleb and Joshua, say, Moses, it's just like you promised. They got milk and honey and these grapes and pomegranates and figs, and they got everything we want. Let's go get it. They're excited. Then the other 10 say, hold up. Hold up. There's some bad dudes living in that land. There's giants. So all this looks great. All this looks great. But we're going to have to pass. We're going to have to pass. And what's interesting here is all 12 of the people saw the same thing. Saw the same thing. It's like in court. I have trials, 5 witnesses. All 5 people get up there and say something different. All the time. Robert's back there shaking his head. Why is that different people come back with different perspectives? One of them focused on the fruit, right? The fruit. Why is the fruit a big deal? The fruit is a big deal because if you own the land, you own the fruit. Okay? If I have a neighbor who has an orange tree on their property and I want some oranges, I got 2 options. I can send my kids over the fence to bring me some oranges. I can go next door to my neighbor and ask them if I can have some oranges. But when you own the land, they're your oranges. So that's why the fruit is a big deal here. We also get a report. Now, our report is a reality check. A report, when you want to report on something in your business or in your school, or if you work for the state or teach in the public school system, all you do all day is reports. Where's Wayne? I'm sure he'll agree with me. That's facts. How did this happen? How many hours did I bill? Did I follow the curriculum? That's a reality check. A reality check when we had COVID was every day on the news. How many cases did they have? How many deaths were there? We saw that stuff all day. A reality check is in the current war in Ukraine. They talk about every morning how far the Russians have advanced. How far the Russians have advanced. Now what we have to do is when we get a report and when we get the fruit at the same time, we have to make a decision. We have to make a decision how we're going to do something, how we're going to focus on something. One of the things we do in this country and in this world is we're big on what is called coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms. You know what coping mechanisms mean? It means I'm accepting the bad stuff going on in my life, but I've just decided I'm going to learn how to deal with it. That's a coping mechanism. But the problem is when you only focus on coping mechanisms and you accept your situation, you go from somebody who's dealing with something to that situation being who you are. Who you are. You go from somebody who's looking for a job to being somebody who's unemployed. You go from being somebody who is searching for a life partner or a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend to somebody who is lonely. When you accept the report in your life sometimes, we start trying to cope. And then the more we cope, the more it becomes our identity. The more it becomes an identity. One thing we want to do is we want things to come to us easy. Right? That's what happened here. The Israelites, they wanted to go to the land and have God say, you know what? Y'all have had a rough 40 years. Here's all this stuff. But instead, when they were confronted with the idea that they had to take the land, 10 of the 12 passed. Right? And isn't that what we do all the time? When we're in the valley of life, David said, I was talking to David this morning, he's preaching on being in the valley of life. When you're in the valley of life, you lose patience. You don't want to hang around in the valley. What do you want to do? You want to get out of the valley. When Jesus and his disciples started getting together and he started telling them who he was, read the stories in the Gospels. All the disciples were frustrated. Jesus, why are we going through all this? If you're the Messiah, just call all the angels down, take over, kick the Romans out, and let's move on. So, there's history for all this. We get frustrated. It doesn't have to be this way. Many times, it takes a while to find the fruit. It takes a while to find the fruit. A good story that I like, and you'll understand why I like this particular story. Man, 1921, this guy sets up in New York City a cartoon company. And within a few years, this person was completely broke, was almost homeless and destitute. And the story tells us he moves out to California and he's got nothing but his sketchbook and he's got his clothes on his back and that kind of stuff. And he started over, and that person's name is Walt Disney. And he made a bunch of money, and I keep paying his relatives. He never lost sight of the fruit. He knew he had vision. He knew he had talent. But he never lost sight of the fruit. So, how do we create a lifestyle where we recognize the fruit in our life? The first thing I think we have to do is we have to develop an appetite for the fruit. When you are hungry, I don't know about y'all. When I'm hungry, I can't focus on anything else but food. Some of y'all shaking your head and other people are lying. I know how y'all are. When you're hungry, that's all you think about, right? I mean, I get up some morning and say, what am I having for dinner tonight? It's 8:05. Let me think about what I'm eating tonight. So the first thing we have to do in our lives is we have to develop an appetite for the fruit. We have to decide now where the fruit is in our life, where the potential fruit is in our life, and start doing things that we need to do to reach the fruit. The second thing we need to do, and this is hard sometimes, you have to recognize the fruit in your life right now. You have to recognize the fruit in your life right now. Because if you have a goal or a dream, there's little things going on sometimes in our life where God is leading us to the fruit. The hard thing is recognizing those things, right? It could be one little grape. For King David, it was one little stone. There's little things in our life that God puts there. But we have to have the right attitude. It's kind of a glass half empty, half full thing. Our Sunday school class did a study, and I love the name of this book. It was Some Folks Feel the Rain and Others Just Get Wet. Have you ever seen the map of the children of Israel for 40 years? They going all back and forth, running around. I mean, it makes no sense. But if you follow the Old Testament, every time the Israelites were thankful towards God and recognizing the fruit, they moved forward. Look at the map. Every time they quit focusing on the fruit and looked at stuff like, oh, I'm hungry. I don't like the way manna tastes. It's too hot in the desert. I wish we were somewhere with air conditioning. Every time they said something like that, God made them go back and back and back. So you have to recognize the fruit. The third thing you have to do is you have to let other people see the fruit in you. You have to let other people see the fruit in you. Because at the end of the day, we focus a lot on words. People focus more on your actions. People focus more on your actions. When you are positive in your life, they're looking at you. And you know one thing? They look at you knowing you come here on a Sunday morning. They're looking for something in your life that's special. An attitude, a belief, a smile, positive words. They're relying on you to help them find the fruit in their life. And fair or not, if you have faith, they know it. And they're watching. Fair or not. Fair or not. And the other thing I think we need to do, and this is the hard one too, we must be willing to allow our fruit to grow. How many of y'all plant a garden? I planted a garden one time. I went out there every day for about a month and nothing ever happened. I never planted another garden. That's too much work. I don't have that kind of patience. I'm not doing that. You have to allow your fruit to grow. There's a parable about the fig tree where this guy has got this guy managing his fig trees, and after 3 years, he goes to the guy and says, I'm not making any money off these figs. You don't know what you're doing. B. Tweedy gave you the wrong seed. You don't know, forget it. I'm cutting all these trees down and starting over. And in the parable, the guy says, Mr. Fig Tree owner, give me one more year. Give me just one more year. And I will do things and work harder, and these figs will produce. Well, in the parable, the guy says, okay, I'll give you one more year. And guess what? We had figs galore. Finding the fruit in your life, finding the fruit that God's giving you in your life, takes something called trust. See, trust goes back to more of the fruit than the report. Okay, it's easy to trust things that are in black and white, but we have to trust that God is watching us and carrying us. There's a pastor that said there's a big difference between trust and understanding. Trust is what we need when we don't have understanding. We're going to be, at all times in our life, faced with trials, tribulations, stress, times of depression. And in all those situations, every one of them, you're going to have a choice. You can look at the report, or you can understand that God has led you to a promised land and there is fruit available to you. And the choice you make is, are you going to cross into the promised land and take the fruit? And that's your choice this morning. Wait.
morning. The Lord welcomes all who come to dine at his table, so it's only fitting that we begin with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory forever.
O Heavenly Father, look down upon these elements. Make them nourish our spirit and our soul. We are not worthy to receive such a gift from thee, but only by your word shall we be healed. On the night that he was betrayed, he was with his disciples, and they sat down for dinner. And he took the bread, and he broke the bread, and he gave it to his disciples, and said, "Take this, all of you, and eat. This is my body, the body that will be broken for you for the forgiveness of sins. Take this, all of you, and eat, and do this as often as possible in remembrance of me." When supper was over, he took the cup. Giving it thanks and praise, he gave the cup to his disciples and said, "Take this, all of you, and drink. This is my blood, blood of a new and everlasting covenant, a covenant that will be shed and spilled for you for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me, and do it often."